Okay, Sheridan. I think it's important to say, first and foremost, in our friendship, that regardless of the skill set of a painter you are, I do not want your pictures.
That's a hot take. I know what to get you for Christmas and your birthday now. I'm going to paint some paintings.
If you entered my home and drew my eyes on my childhood home, it would not be a, oh, how sweet.
You'd be upset.
What did you do to my house?
It was so ballsy that she did that. Like, just thinking they would be like, oh, this is fantastic. Thank you for drawing our eyes in the house.
Think of the absolute self-confidence in your painting you have to be like, I'm going to paint everything.
Can I tell you something crazy? Because I don't think he'll ever listen to this episode, but like I have some actual hot tea in my real life for this.
Oh.
Resand might listen, but can he please come to life and listen to this episode? We would have truly made it. Like, is there any other form of making it than if Resand comes to life and he's like, you know what I need to do? I need to listen to Sippin' on Spice's book podcast.
He does every Thursday.
But no, some hot tea in real life. I don't think he'll ever listen to this, so I think this is appropriate to say, but my uncle actually does paint Santa Clauses every year, and he gives everyone the same painting of Santa Claus every year. Like, every year he changes the Santa, but then he gives all of us a copy of that Santa Claus. He is talented. I am not being rude like that.
I have so much to ask you here.
Yeah.
Number one, you say he's a different Santa every year. Talk to me more about that. Is he beach Santa? Like,
kind of. He like edits this, like he updates the Santa, he updates the colors, like what Santa's doing. But every year it's a Santa.
What is Santa usually doing?
Like on a sleigh, but he has then a beach Santa, you're right. Or like one time it was like a hiking Santa, like in the mountains, which is cute. Like, this is sweet and stuff, but it's like, it's not even like personalized where, you know, you get like, hey, I painted this on a canvas and I'm going to give it to you because I love you. He literally paints this and then makes copies of it. So it's not even the actual painting. It's just like a photocopy. And then we all, like all of the extended family, get a copy of the photocopy.
Okay. Where are all of your Santa photos?
In our garage.
But you keep them. So there is a
stack or a full-on section of the garage dedicated to these Santas.
Okay, hear me out.
Yeah.
Next year for Christmas, okay, you take all of the photos of Santas you have and you turn them into a calendar, and you respond to his Santa photo with calendars of all of the Santa's photos to distribute.
Let's do it. You're thinking now. That's a great idea.
I see your Santa and I raise you a Santa calendar.
I raise you, Santa. Look at the Santa calendar. I don't think he'd take that well, but like that would be hysterical. But so I did.
It's just hard.
I don't know. True. So I see from Farah's perspective, which is the episode we're going to talk about today, why she thought maybe this was from a place of love.
So do we want to get into it now that we've
let's do it.
Gotten really out of it?
Let's do it.
Okay. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Sheridan.
And together we're Sippin' on Spice podcast.
And this week we are so excited because we are going to be doing an ACOTAR episode, which is amazing. This is going to be completely spoiler filled, and we are going to be discussing ACOTAR through the events of A Court in Frost and Starlight, the novella. So if you have not read, again, there will be spoilers abound. And it's going to be our ACOTAR like deep dive.
Yes. We just did a reread. So I read this. This is the book that you gave me to get back into reading because I hadn't been a big reader in a while. And you gave me A Court of Thorns and Roses and said, like, just give it a try. And then, of course, the rest is history.
I know. You want to know something's crazy? If I had never been like, hey, do you want to try reading ACOTAR? This podcast would not have taken off. I mean, it could have. We don't know the trajectory of the world. But like ACOTAR started the journey. We owe ACOTAR this journey.
Yeah,
I agree. Which is actually huge.
Yeah. It was such a good book series. I remember it did take me like over 50% to get in the book, and I remember being like, Sheridan, what have you given? And you were like, hang in there.
It gets better. It gets a lot better.
Well, this is before I realized that if you look up fan art, you accidentally get spoilers. So I remember Googling like Tamlin because I Okay,
Oh.
I pictured Tamlin when they described the masks that they wore. In my head, it wasn't like a masquerade thin mask. He was wearing a full golden plague doctor, like with a nose. So they would like describe them like hooking up, and I'd be like, "How is she getting in there?" Like,
How is he not stabbing her with his beak?
I was like, "Is he pecking her? Like, what is that?"
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, I can see why you had a different reading experience.
So like halfway through, I was like, "Okay, I need to see why like she thinks this guy is so hot." So I looked up fan art, and then I ended up seeing like all the inner circle art and like Resand, and I was like, "Who the fuck are these?"
You're like, who are they?
And it took me forever to find fan art of Tamlin, and I was like, "This is weird for the main male character to have no art."
Interesting. So you were almost spoiled. You almost found the spoilers, pretty much.
It's like I felt like something was up, but I didn't have any concrete proof because at the time, like, I was not on TikTok or anything. So, like, I didn't have any, like, I had, like, the Google images.
All you had to rely on.
So I didn't get him tattooed on me.
Oh, okay. Good. You weren't that moved that you were like, wow, there might be people out there who got Tamlin tattoos.
That's unfortunate.
I mean, it could have happened. I don't know. I would just get it changed or removed at that point.
It depends on what it is. Like, what if it's a full, like, portrait of Tamlin?
Okay, so that would be very interesting. But if someone did choose to do that, I do think they could get it covered over with something else. The portrait could change.
I feel like I'd lie and be like, "This is my cousin."
He has pointy ears. Yeah. He died.
The artist got the ears wrong.
Oh my god.
He always wanted to be an elf.
And it says like "rest in peace" underneath it. Like changing. I mean.
That's how you get it fixed. You just add dates.
Right. Exactly.
We're going to help for this.
He always wanted to be an elf. You were just. He really liked Lord of the Rings, and he wanted to be Legolas, and he wanted the long hair and the ears.
We're going to hell for this joke.
We are. Okay, if you are listening and you have a full portrait-sized Tamlin tattoo, please comment on this episode. But also, like, we're not judging you. We just want to know why. We just want to hear
like,
why.
No, I want to know what your plan is. Like, are you going to see it out?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, God.
Are you going to change it? What are you going to do? Oh, that's so funny.
Okay. So what do you want to start with ACOTAR? I don't have a ton of notes on ACOTAR as a
No,
whole, actually.
I don't either. Like on the book of A Court in Thorns and Roses, I have more as we get into farther books. The only thing that I thought was really interesting upon this reread is you obviously are rereading it from the perspective she ends up with Resand, so you just kind of like you're looking out for when you meet him. And I did think it was so much more sweeter when we get to the Callan May event, and he's like Clan Mai?
Did I read that wrong?
Maybe.
Is the L in a different spot?
I couldn't tell you at this point.
Is what we get for reading, man.
Right, exactly. We need more audiobooks, apparently. That event when he's like, "I've been looking for you."
Yeah.
Very sweet.
What actually I picked out this time that I didn't pick out in any of my other rereads, because I will say ACOTAR specifically still does bore me for the first 50% of it. Like, even the reread, I was like, I'm going to skim some pages. But what stood out to me is like there's a point early on where Resand like kind of hurts her when she's in the jail cell before he even makes the bargain. I think it's to pressure her to like listen to him and to like. It was the one thing I didn't remember being a thing that actually surprised me that I did a double take on, where he like twists her arm. You remember?
Yeah, no, I did. It's not the coolest thing Resand ever does, and I do know. Something that shocked me too, and I'm going to shock you in this. I was on the lookout for it. So I loved Lucien way more in ACOTAR reread and acomaf, because there are different jokes that happen where they're almost, upon reread again, just different perspective, him and Fair are almost flirting. Like when he says, like in the beginning, this is before she's agreed to love Tamlin, and they say their "I love yous" way before she meets Reese. This is just, he's basically saying like, well, if I had been the one, he says something like that. If it had been me, you know, and so I actually felt like they kind of had tension and were flirting. And then as we get later into the series, just if we're just going to jump around, again, these are all spoilers, when we're in even acowar and she is destroying the spring court when she goes back, she makes a point to look like her and Lucien have tension, chemistry and tension, so she could divide the court. So actually rereading, I was kind of like, did Sarah J. Maas have something else in mind for ACOTAR and then the story took her elsewhere? I don't know. It was interesting.
So I have two things to say here because it's
Okay.
I love that you said this because I'm going to take this a step further.
Oh, okay. I'm excited.
But first, I want to address I liked him less. I remember thinking of him as one of her friends in the beginning. And I think because I thought of him as a friend, I struggled so much more with his neglect under the mountain. Again, knowing that they all had different things to go against, and maybe Rhysand had a little bit more freedom to move about the cabin, so to speak.
True.
But there were times where I thought they really just almost forgot she was human. And like all of the ways that she could like it was almost like they didn't think of it because they are immortal, but like she almost, by the time Rhysand makes a bargain with her, like Lucien was like, oh, I was coming to you, like you, I think you thought that you had more time than you did, right? So like that kind of bothered me. And second is that his neglect of how Tamlin treats her throughout it makes it even worse to me, because if you were truly somebody's friend and you saw that, the amount of times he bows down to Tamlin is what frustrates me almost more than Tamlin himself. Because you could somewhat see from Tamlin's perspective that PTSD of directly after, right? We're taking Ianthe and her coming back out of it. I'm talking like when they're first back from under the mountain and trying to get married. You could almost understand what his PTSD is doing to him and needing to control and protect, right? But Lucien and the amount of not defending and being there for her and being a voice of reason, to me, is nobody's friend. Like, he wasn't being Tamlin's friend. He wasn't being Vera's friend. Like, that bothered me a lot.
Interesting. Okay, I have a response.
Go ahead, because the next part is going to dive into were they almost
like they
together?
could have had chemistry.
Yes.
Okay, I think Lucien's biggest thing, issue, or journey, or his way PTSD manifests. I do want to start off this point with saying it's not that I disagree with you. I do not disagree with you. I think Lucien should have done a lot more. She even goes into detail saying that, like, when he finally does go to the night court, he's no scrub, basically. Like, he can throw down and fight. She says it more eloquently than that. But so it's like, Lucien, you probably could have stood up to Tamlin and you just chose not to. But what I think of upon reread that became very clear to me, or I thought of more maybe,
he's scared of losing another court.
Yeah, not even that, not even a court. I think it's like, okay, so Lucien is obviously really by his dad and his brothers, but his dad. And then obviously there's no love. He has a lot of childhood previous love, like that trauma. Tamlin is like an abusive person to him, because I actually think this is really common in real life. When someone has been, unless they've done the work to heal themselves, sometimes when they go out in the world, they gravitate towards the people that remind them of their. So he typically to
seek like acceptance.
Exactly, or to like rewrite the story, like have it have a different ending. So Tamlin is a narcissist who takes advantage of Lucien, and Lucien does not stand up to him because he views Tamlin as the person that does love him in a platonic way or in a familial way, the only person in the world that has been there for him, quote unquote. So he will never do anything to go against Tamlin because he views Tamlin that way, and Tamlin is manipulating him and is abusive to Lucien. But the reason Lucien does that, and I do think this happens in real life, is you sometimes you find someone who does manipulate you, and it's like a narcissist. It doesn't have to be a relationship. It doesn't have to be romantic. So he is someone who's being manipulated by Tamlin. So he would never, no matter who Farah was, wasn't, whatever, friend or not, he was living out trauma with his family.
I could see that, actually. No, that actually makes a lot of sense. Now, I do want to go back to the Lucien, Farah.
There's
tension.
Chemistry, yes.
Number one, I do know that initially Sarah J. Maas actually planned on Lucien and Nesta to be together. But
interesting.
She realized as she was writing, this just didn't feel right? Like they just weren't, whatever, oil and water, as they say. I I think that's I think that's what they say.
Yeah.
But one of my first notes was Lucien treats Farah like a lover scorned in acowar. So when he comes and he's after they leave the spring court together and he's seeing Rhysand and she like kind of starts defending herself and like her being with Rhysand. What's funny to me is he's like, I see everybody's just so much better than us. You meant they were better than us. Like everything was about us, not Tamlin, not the spring court even. It was like us. And the way he worded all of that was literally like, you left me.
Interesting. Oh, okay. I totally agree with your point. That's fascinating. Maybe in Lucien's mind, again, we're giving thoughts to these characters, but did he want to be in a throuple situation? Because again, I almost felt
he was the Kieran.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on that. But
where's your joining?
Yes. Maybe that's what Lucien kind of thought the vibes were going to be, especially if you view Tamlin and that really, like, from my theory, and that really, again, it's not romantic. Lucien has put Tamlin on this pedestal, and I wonder then if he almost viewed Farah as like a part of that.
I was so shocked that you came to that same conclusion because I thought I was going to shock you with my lover scorned comment. So it's crazy that you and I both took away like.
Yes. Well, I think this can be our first start of the long journey of character assassination. Lucien, from the beginning, he's a little bit bolder, and then he gets less and less and less bold in pushing back against Tamlin. At the beginning, he goes in to like grab her and like get her away from him.
And he hates her.
Exactly. So I do feel like at first it's very different. And then I do think we go on maybe the first character assassination that's going to happen in this series. Spoiler alert. He is different in A Court of Thorns and Roses versus acomaf and acowar. Absolutely.
Yeah. He almost like continually, I feel like as like the series goes on, he like Homer Simpson backs into the hedges. Like his whole personality just like dissipates to the point where like I remember there's a point where Rhysand says like, oh, he didn't have that fox mask for nothing. I still to this point do not believe anything about that him being the fox. Like I could not sit here right now and tell you a time he wowed me. Had a moment where he had a good fight, had a moment where he came through. Like even if you think about what he did in the war, right? Like let's go forward. He ran into them as they were headed there. So he was like, come on, squad. And like Dora the Explorer brought them all along. He did not actually do anything as an emissary.
True. That is so, I'm not disagreeing with you, which is again shocking and sad because I do think in book one, we get so much more of a setup. And then we're also emotionally invested. At least I felt specifically in the reread that I was emotionally invested because he goes with her to the night court when they're running away. We have this whole, he also has unfortunately and tragically experienced basically by Ianth. So then, you know, we have all of this, we're set up to have this emotional tether to him, we're invested, and then he just kind of
and think about how messed up Tamlin's obsession with Ianth is. Not just from what he does to his own sentries, is that the right word? Sentries, but also like the fact that Lucien could not tell him what happened and how he'd been pursuing him. Like think about the level of neglect and pedestal she had to be put on for not only Farah to have to back down, but Lucien.
Sick. Gross. I hate it. I hate that part. Like, again, I actually think, I'm not going to lie, when we're on TikTok scrolling sometimes and I see people bring up potentially a Tamlin redemption arc and like, but then in this reread, I'm doubling down. He just did so many things.
I agree with that. Sorry. And I think what challenges me the most, because I think if you had asked me before this reread, I would have been like, a Tamlin redemption arc? Okay.
Maybe it happens. All right. Yeah.
As long as it's like a side character kind of thing would have been my level of investment. Now rereading it, he is so abusive, not just mentally, but physically. Like if Farah wouldn't have been able to defend herself,
it would have been really bad.
Yeah. And that was just time one. Like he does it again. He breaks things when he's upset. He destroyed his whole manor. He is all because of every little thing that happens. He has no control over his emotions. And that's scary. He had no loyalty to his people. Not
even Lucien that basically sacrificed. He doesn't even have loyalty to Lucien either.
He all did this all for a power grab to a group that he knew he sold himself out to. and claimed he didn't care about. So it was just like thing after thing after thing. Like a narcissist is the right word. Like there is no world in which you can pitch me he has any redemption arc, and I'm fine with it. I want him to lose the spring court. Somebody has to completely rebuild the spring court because he just doesn't give a the tide. That alone is stupid. Like, it's just everything about him. What did you like about him? You know what I mean?
Yep. I completely agree. Once we get in ACOTAR, when these things start to happen, like towards the end of ACOTAR, and you see that relationship break apart, what I actually love about this series is, again, it is a cautionary tale to young women or anyone who's in a relationship, anyone who's going to enter a relationship. Look for the warning signs, because he love bombs her. He tells her she's going to be safe, secure, and taken care of. And then he does these abusive actions. Then he immediately goes, I'll do better. I'm so sorry. And it's like, this is not something you can just say sorry for. I'll try to do better.
Try was his word, remember?
It was. And I'm so sorry. You just can't apologize for that. And no, I'm so sorry. She could have been impaled by a piece of furniture. And because it's shattered.
And then the hardest part for me was when they get to the High Lord meeting and he treats everything like everything happened to him.
Narcissism and narcissism.
Not one piece of it was not, this happened to me. And so it's like, okay, so you can't take accountability for anything you did then. Even if you want to say that she was dicking around with Rhysand, right? Even if you want to pretend that part was true, he took zero accountability for anything that happened.
No. And you actually just jogged my memory and brought up a super specific point. Another reason he's terrible is because he does still have civilians. He has people he's, as a High Lord, if we're looking at it as a government structure that he's responsible for to keep safe. He lets that all go to shit. And those people, those Fae, members of his court, are at danger because he is not doing his. So not only is he terrible to Lucien, Farah, his sentries, he also just puts all of his people he is responsible for at risk.
He also, Eris says one specific comment towards the end. I can't remember if it's in the novella or if it's in Silver Flames. So this might be one piece I take from that just for this particular argument. And that is, he says that there's a beast wandering these areas, walking by any crime and neglect that he sees. So that tells me he sees people being victimized and just wanders on by in his little wolf form. That's crazy to me.
Terrible. Crazy.
Because you have a little sad heart. Listen, Taylor Swift can do it with a broken heart. So can you, Tamlin.
Facts.
Okay, so I think there's this big debate of a betrayal in the inner circle. Now, I want to note that I went into it, one, with the mindset of wondering if that was real, and two, that in my attempts to find this interview, a quote, etc., where any betrayal is mentioned, I cannot find it. Other people on the internet also noted that they could not find it. So I want to say that I take this betrayal sentence with a grain of salt, and I don't even know that I'm going to truly debate it, because
I got it. Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know that we have anything that truly tells us that this happened. Unless this interview got mysteriously wiped from the internet, it's become a hotly contested debate, and there's no bite trail to the original source. Now, if you have it, you send it my way. I am interested. I would like to talk about it because I wanted to break down specifically what she said, right? Did she say it happened to the inner circle, from the inner circle, right? I wanted her wording so that I really was critically thinking about it, but I can't find it. It's not real. It's not real.
Okay, I love that you bring this up. I'm so excited we're diving into this because I will stand on business and say that prior to this reread, I was 1,000% certain this quote-unquote betrayal, that now I guess is maybe just even hearsay because we cannot find actual documentation of this interview, was going to be more. I was so assured she was the betrayer. Everything with like the folklore of the Morrigan in Celtic mythology. Also, everything with another name for Morrigan being Maeve. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if not. So then it was kind of like, well, we know Maeve in Throat of Glass. I'm going to tell you, maybe shock you. I totally don't think, upon reread, I didn't pick up anything that makes her sound like a betrayer.
And I thought that whole thing, so I spent a significant amount of time thinking about Mor, because I also think that Mor gets on a lot in the book community.
She does.
So something that stood out to me that would be the only time that I think she has any opportunity of wanting vengeance that I actually think would be justified is that I could not necessarily blame her if she had any unresolved feelings after the war and the agreements that were made in her place without her knowledge. So when Rhysand goes and makes the deal with Eris and Care in front of her, having already worked this out, there is no reason whatsoever she could not have been informed beforehand.
Yeah.
Even if she didn't agree, he didn't have to change his mind, right? I don't think that him changing his mind was necessarily the solution. But what I mean is, as a part of your inner circle, your literal third, and somebody you consistently mention has been wronged by people that you consistently mention you'd be fine to get rid of, you're telling me she didn't deserve the decency of a heads up?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. And they're like cousins, aren't they? Like, in addition to all
Yes.
this, they're like cousins.
They're cousins.
Yeah. Yeah.
But from outside of that, she is always showing up for everybody. Picks Farah over Rhysand when she gets when the mating bond happens. Then you also have her point of view, which I think is so important and something I actually thought a lot about. So in A Court of Frost and Starlight, multiple characters get a point of view, which we haven't had up until this point. It was 100% Farah's point of view. Even from Mor's point of view, all she cares about is the people. When she reflects on things happening to Farah and other women, she reflects on it as painfully as she did for herself. So there's not a point in there where she doesn't double down on the character she is.
I agree. And earlier in acowar, when he's saying he needs to go to Kier for his army, she is multiple times, I don't think this is smart. In her own words, like, I'm not on board with this. Or she's like, I'll go because it will be worse if I don't. And it's like, he doesn't even, not that he needs to make a decision based off of what she says, you're right. But from a position of being this high up third cousin, like, he doesn't care at all. When we get into Silver Flames, which is going to be a separate episode, my feelings do change. We're just going to put a pin in that, though.
I'm ready to fight you on that, actually. I've spent a lot of times debating if Mor is the worst.
Okay, there's just a few things she does in Silver Flames that really bug me, and we will talk about that in that episode. From my perspective, when you get to find out that Mor is bisexual, I thought that Sarah J. Maas had made that decision later and not from the beginning of the series when she was planning it all out, which authors do. You can take your characters on different journeys than you originally had.
Like, as you write them, find them.
Exactly.
Because I think that was a big thing, even with like the Nesta Lucien, is as she wrote them, she found a different character.
Absolutely. I had originally thought that, but I will say, upon reread in A Court of Mist and Fury and acowar, I actually think there are hints that she was way earlier on that just are not made clear yet. Because there's one specific scene when they go out dancing, and you've brought this up too. She's looking on into the crowd, but then they're like, "Who are you looking at?"
And she won't tell them. And then every single time she leaves with somebody, she acts like weird about it. She disappears. She Irish goodbyes. She never mentions anything. So it was a very clear. She was doing her own thing and she didn't want anybody to see it.
I completely agree. But upon reread, because again, I was a little influenced by the book community online where I was like, Mor's the traitor, especially when we think that there's a betrayal coming. My mind fit in Mor perfectly into that theory. But rereading, I'm like, she loved Farah so much. Like in A Court of Mist and Fury, she goes to get Farah. She finds her at the cabin or visits her at the cabin. She is a girl's girl for Farah the entire time.
Yeah. And she's the only one she tells her like deep dark secrets to. Like, I totally agree. I think that she gets so much hate. And upon reread, looking at it, like trying to find that feeling for her, I lost this feeling that I feel like I picked up through other people's influence.
I agree.
Okay. So I want to talk about Eris a bit.
Ooh,
I'll have more to say probably in Silver Flames, but right now I want to call out that there is an Eris Redemption arc coming that I believe, and I think I will be able to debate with you, that Eris is Rhysand from a different point of view.
Oh my God. So interesting. And I would actually love for that to happen.
I think, because again, I went into this wanting an Eris Redemption arc because I picked up on a lot of these things towards the end of the series, and I went back in it like, I want to remember how bad he was at first. Like, what happens to make me truly hate him outside of knowing the past of what happens with Moore? One of the first things that he notes when he talks about in the early series, what he notes when he talks about why he left her, because that was one of the questions that somebody asked her. He says, there were forces at work. I'm very interested in that. He said he left her because there were forces at work that we don't understand. My thought is that potentially he knew that she was, but also played his part as Rhysand has. Because he also notes that the rumors about him being vicious are inaccurate, and says, this is a direct quote, "There are a few things I regret. That is one of them, but perhaps one day, now that we are allies, I shall tell you why and what it cost me."
Oh, yes.
Tell me that's not dangerously close to Amarantha storyline. I can tell you what this cost me.
And I also think, okay, I have 2 points here. I also think, please refresh my memory, from my perspective in the reread, I do not believe he was the one who actually nailed anything.
He didn't. Her. So her family nails it to her, leaves her on the edge of the court so that Eris will find her, and pretty much says she's Eris's problem. Their problem with Eris is that Eris comes along, sees her, tells her she's essentially like ruined goods because of, slanders Cassian, and then leaves her. So the problem is that she's there dying, is going to die, and he sees her, pretty much spits on her, and walks away. The places they tell the story, so probably so that you don't immediately think, oh, he's not that bad, right? She wants you to believe he's bad at this point in time. She wants you to question his loyalty to the Night Court, how much he wants to pursue this with his dad, right? But what I think, right, is we know that Azriel then finds her in the desert. And I think later on he makes a comment saying that I think she now is starting to understand what happened. Oh. So again, because that's a big debate against Moore too, is that she knew what happened and on Eris and lies. I don't think that's true either. I think over time, she starts to see a different perspective. Now, what I personally believe, is that Eris did something to tip off Azriel without saying it to Azriel, because again, he needs to be seen as the bad guy. He's playing almost this Rhysand villain point of view, right? And he even makes a comment, you're also quick to forgive Rhysand. Like, is nobody looking behind the curtain here too? And I think that this is such an important point, and I think he alerted Azriel so she wouldn't die somehow. I don't know how he did it. I don't know what happened, but I think the reason Azriel found her has to do with Eris's prompting, because we have no data on how he found her.
Oh, I love that. I hope we're right. I have a spicy point for you in Silver Flames, which we'll debate later. But I do think that Eris is getting his redemption arc, and I'm so here for it. I totally think your theory could be accurate, and I'm excited. Who do we think is Eris's love interest then?
That's so hard, because honestly, until I did the reread and really doubled down on Moore being, not that I didn't believe her before, but again, there was a lot of discourse that makes you really distrust anything she says. So I went back and thought about it. At first I was like, oh, it would actually be kind of crazy if they end up together.
It would be. Well, and she's right. So it's not that she doesn't.
She said she doesn't find the same love with men. So the way I interpret that is she likes with men.
Gotcha.
But
what
not
if then
love.
Not like emotional? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What if it's Elain? Well, no, it can't be Elain. She's already got Azriel and Lucien.
I have a case of who I think Moore ends up with, which we can talk about in the Court of Silver Flames.
Okay. I meant who ends up with Eris.
Now, Eris, that's interesting. I can't imagine Eris taking another thing from Lucien.
No, but I think, oh my God, I would riot if we do not get a resolution of the Lucien, Elain, Azriel triangle in the next book. I need that.
It's just, in what world do we see Lucien and Elain ending up together? I just still don't see it. They honestly don't, like, Lucien seems jealous just for the point of jealousy. He's never around for the most part. Sounds like he's honestly got tension with Vassa. My personal opinion.
God. Can we go into this?
Sure.
I'm so excited. Okay, I've been waiting to talk to you about this. I think he has tension with Vasa. And also, he's Helian's real son. Farah makes a point to call Helian multiple times spell cleaver. Vasa is under a spell as like the swan princess, basically. What if he is somehow able to break her spell and Vasa is Lucien's endgame?
And it's interesting because a lot of the debate around this is if the mating bond is fake or was made up by the cauldron. But I don't think it is. And there's one clear part that tells us this, right? And Lucien, it's when he's trying to get to Elain when she turns Fae and, you know, is kind of mourning her life and she's not responding to anybody. And then she starts to have the vision. So remember, they say, ask the mate to see. First of all, the healer immediately sees that they're mates. Immediately sees it. Second is Lucien tugs on the bond and feels it. So he says, he's like, oh my God, it's really there. And we know he's not Tamlin because they just exited the spring court together. We know where Tamlin is. We know what Tamlin's up to. This theory's crazy to me.
I know it's a far out there one, but the fact that Tamlin may be shapeshifting as Lucien is actually, I would just absolutely love that reveal because that's like some Dateline.
But there's
thriller.
no pathway in which this happens. Like, there literally isn't.
That we don't know. Don't know.
He's turning into a wolf and shape-shifting in the wilderness.
But we don't see. What if that's a different wolf? True, but what if? Okay, all right. We're gonna put that aside because I'm trying to rile you up now because I feel like
you're
that's
wrong.
Like
You're just wrong.
Fun theory.
You're wrong.
But I am interested to see. I do think we're getting a redemption arc for Eris. I guess that does not mean that we necessarily see him end up with anyone romantically. He could just be redeemed in his redemption arc. He doesn't need to have a partner. But
I don't know. I want him to have a partner. I want him to be happy.
Oh well, I have spicy thoughts for you in Silver Flames.
Okay. Okay. If you say what I think you're gonna say, I have also prepared a bibliography to fight you on it.
Okay.
So another thought on Moore. Hints at her magic, because I think that's another thing that we talk about all the time is what the does the magic
what
of
does the truth mean?
I spent a lot of time digging for her magic, right? There's a couple of things that she does, right? The way that she speaks about the queens about Valaris, when they are questioning how do we know this is true, she makes a comment that her eyes glaze over and she takes on a different voice when she confirms it to be true.
Okay.
And then the second is Elain asks her to confirm she's a seer. And Moore does like a look. And they say it looks like she's looking at Elain for the first time. And she confirms that she is. No one else was able to confirm that she was a seer. So it's almost like she, in situations, can identify what is true and what is not true.
Interesting. Which in political intrigue and they're at war, different courts, is very handy.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
You don't see it used as much, which is interesting.
No.
But I wonder if it's because the people that they would use it on are people that she's been internally scarred by. Your heiresses.
Oh, maybe.
You know what I'm saying? So
Peers,
I wonder if it's, we don't see it as much because she isn't able or emotionally able to separate her power. It's almost like she gets presented a question or an opportunity and she is able to confirm or deny it.
Interesting. Another thing
power.
Too. It is, but it could be very handy. It
wasn't. At no point in time was it.
It could be. It could. Operative word being could. Another point I'm just going to double down that I just thought of that she's a girl's girl, and I liked her way more upon this reread, is she is the one that brings the priestesses like Clotho to the library. And they said she stayed with them for like a month to help them adjust and be there for them.
And after the break-in, she and Rhys are the ones who spend their time there. She goes there and spends time because she wants them to know, because essentially their place was infiltrated. So she wants them to
feel secure again.
Yes, to feel secure. Exactly.
Okay, I have a point I wanted to bring up real quick, but it's a little bit off topic.
Okay.
And it's going to be about the bone carver scene with Farah and Cassian.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to do it quick. I just want to put in a little marker here for everybody listening. If you have not finished the Crescent City series, please skip ahead just a little bit because I'm going to talk a little bit about Crescent City if approved. So, The bone carver is talking about their siblings, and they talk about the weaver, basically, when Cassian and Farah go to visit him in acowar, is talking about the weaver being her sister, how terrible. The bone carver doesn't want to leave the prison because he's like, if you knew my siblings, you wouldn't want to leave the prison either. I'm safer here. And then he talks about how back in the day, there was this warrior that fought his siblings basically eons ago, and they say her over and over. So I think it's Thea from the Crescent City lore, because also he then says, and her descendants are nowhere to be found. You can only find remnants of this Fey warrioress in the human line. So then I'm like, that's Bryce. That's Bryce, and that's Thea.
Yeah, and especially because there's like multiverse-esque. I don't even know how
exactly.
Multi-world.
Yes. Multiverse works, I think.
That makes sense.
I also just thought it was so interesting. Something I absolutely loved upon the reread is learning more about the bone carver and his siblings, because the siblings are the weaver, and then I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Koshai.
Yeah, but again,
who knows? Just so interesting. Farah turns to Cassian and says, because she mentions in this prison visit that she saw the same thing in Nesta's eyes of these death gods. And then Cassian says, I would not be afraid of her because I'm a warrior and I've walked beside death my whole life. I would be afraid for her. And Farah says, thank you.
There's one thing that the bone carver says in that scene, though, that I kind of wanted to know if it made sense to you.
Okay.
He addresses him as Lord of the Bastards, first and foremost, and he says...
rude.
Yeah. But then he says, what did you bring out? He almost puts it on Cassian. Like, Cassian did something. Yeah. So, like, what did you pull out of that cauldron or something like that? The way he says it almost implies that Cassian had an effect on who Nesta became.
Wouldn't that be fascinating?
Prince of Bastards, that's what he calls him. He says...
Rude again.
Okay. He says, attention fixed upon a stone-faced Cassian, what if I tell you what the rock in the darkness and the sea beyond whispered to me, Lord of Bloodshed? How they shuddered in fear on that island across the sea, how they trembled when she emerged. She took something precious, and she ripped it out with her teeth. Cassian's face had drained of color, his wings tucked in tight. What did you wake that day in Hybern, Prince of Bastards? He says, what did you wake? And that bothers me because I think even in A Court of Silver Flames, I still don't have anything that makes sense as to what did he wake.
Unless it is something, again, we're getting a little bit into Silver Flames, but what if it is tied to
the
fact that, exactly. Like, what if it, and then that does kind of set her up in a trajectory. I'm wondering if maybe just thrown it out there, because that's interesting. Because at that point, when she goes into the cauldron, Cassian is messed up. He's hurting. He's been damaged.
Crawling to her.
So I'm wondering if that's part of her anger and rage of everything that's happening to Elain, seeing Cassian. And so it's a part of her journey that we get into in Silver Flames, everything that, her powers. Is because at that point she is so angry to see Cassian that way. I just get chills because they're like, I'm like, their relationship is so
it's consistent throughout the whole series. Like, I cannot wait to talk about this.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Side note. Can we talk about how Valaris' view of Amren is very biblical? Like, biblical.
Oh,
tell me more. So when Hybern breaks in, right, and he said he sets Amren out to essentially cleanse and make sure no one's there, and that the people of Valaris put out offerings of blood and mark their doors.
That is biblical.
Tell me that's not like
Prince of Egypt.
Yes, thank you. I was like, that's like a whole thing, like where they put blood on their doors and stuff. I was like, this is some biblical like Amren is the cometh.
Oh my god, that is interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. I also think it's interesting too because they talk about how she is something obviously not of this world.
And what's crazy is, on reflecting before the reread, I couldn't tell you what her power was. And now upon reread, there are so many moments where you do see her power. But I remember being like, what does she ever do?
What is it? Yeah.
Okay, I have something offensive to say to you.
Ooh, I'm worried.
Okay, now I want to preface this with, I love Farah as a character. I think
I was prepared for you to go in a different direction, and I am not happy with this direction. Okay.
I appreciate her journey. I appreciate everything about her. But let me ask you a question, and I want you to really think about it. Don't just give me your feelings answer. What exactly does Farah do as a high lady?
I think my answer, logically speaking, is we don't get a lot of time to see her as a high lady because when she's back from the spring court, they immediately start preparation for war.
Right.
And I think they go into war and she is fighting in the war. I don't think we get the opportunity to see her do a lot of like maybe political things that you're looking for.
We do in Frost and Starlight and Silver Flames. And guess what she's doing from a political standpoint? Nothing. She's responding to emails.
So, this is a point that I had to talk about, and it is not Farah's fault, okay? Her character is assassinated by Sarah J. Maas in the novella and in Silver Flames. The Farah and this actually became so much more apparent to me upon this reread. I'm actually so passionate about it. The Farah we meet in ACOTAR through acowar is a very different Farah than the novella and in Silver Flames. And I actually think it's okay people change and her priorities changed. I just think her priority changed. Her focus has shifted. I think
it's fine when we talk about it from like a combat perspective. Yeah. But I'm talking like when Rhysand is doing a lot of these dealings outside of like attending the weekly thing he does where she sits and responds to all the letters with him. We don't see her attending a lot of these meetings. She's not attending the meetings. She's a lot of times not in the loop on decisions. And it just seems strange to me that if they're supposed to be equals, I'm not seeing equal distribution of power in her actual execution of her role. And I think that I don't even necessarily think it's a character assassination so much as plot assassination.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's almost like they pivoted, but if you're going to call her High Lady, give her all these powers, set her up for these things, that was a huge deal, right? A big thing that people love about these is how empowered Farah became as Rhysand's partner.
No, I agree with you. I think it's plot assassination is maybe a better word. I am also going to say something kind of spicy. I don't really care whether she's High Lady or not High Lady or she does her High Lady duties. What I love about Farah and why she's one of my favorite female main characters is her journey through ACOTAR, through acowar.
Right.
Is she is so brave. She is so courageous. And I think what's amazing out of all of Sarah J. Maas's female leads, when you're reading, you can put yourself in Farah's shoes the easiest. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I think that Farah is the most relatable of the female leads. And you go on this journey with her.
I totally agree. I just think they spent all this time amping up her being High Lady. High Lady was such an important plot point that by the time that she is High Lady, I was like, I don't see her doing any tasks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do you have all this? It just seemed crazy to me that Rhysand was off doing his, I don't know, kingly shit. High Lord. But you don't really see a lot of her doing anything. So I was like, it just felt like they built this up to be like, you can paint. Which is what Tamlin did at the end of the day. I'm sorry.
Again, I think it's plot assassination. It's totally the Farah we get later is different. And I think she never loses her perspective of always fighting for the underdogs, always being selfless, always standing up for people. She never loses that ever. Okay. When they like talk crap about like you can plan the parties and like pay.
Yes.
Like, doesn't sound like a bad life. You want to plan some parties.
But she didn't want to. And that was the point. She didn't want
to. And that was her choice, which you're 100% correct. Yeah. 100% correct.
Okay. I have one more point I want to make before we move on to Silver Flames. Or a question I want to pose to you.
Okay.
Is, have the bad males, and when I say this, I mean Eris technically up to this point, even though I don't think he's bad, and Tamlin, do you feel like there was any redemption or they got what they deserved? My answer is no.
Yeah, I don't think there's any redemption.
And that bothers me so much. Up until this point, up until the novella, everybody's all big talk about how much they hate these people. But nobody does anything. Even in the High Lord meeting, only person up until this point who says literally anything, specifically to Tamlin, that feels like, thank you, that he deserved that. Thank you for saying that out loud, was Nesta. At the High Lord meeting.
Kind of.
Not really. He says, don't talk to my High Lady like that. But when Moore gets offended, he's out there throwing fists.
True.
So
True.
that guy just sat there and just absolutely character assassinated her in front of all of these powerful fae that she saved.
Mm-hmm.
And it just drove me so crazy that it was always the high road. And listen, I get it. I get the high roads, like where we want to be. Not me, okay? I wanted to be on the lowest road possible. I wanted some verbal to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can see that.
even on reread, I was still so mad about it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Especially for me, it's like with Tamlin's abusive tendencies, we need a more finite punishment and Kier, I think we're getting Eris Redemption arc. We're on board. Like, we agree on that. But Kier, he did get all his hand and arm broken.
For a little bit.
Yes, exactly. But that's it. You're right. That's it. You're right. And actually, I think, so I have 2 points to make here, and I'll just go into the one that's closely tied to this. I still love Rhys. He's still probably favorite male leads ever. I do love Rhys, especially in ACOTAR to acowar. We're not talking Silver Flames yet, and the novella. I love Rhys. Like, I just think their romance is fantastic.
Yeah.
There are a few things he did that actually did really bother me.
Okay.
One is I want him to go and physically beat up Tamlin.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we've been reading some dark romance or something.
So sick of the high road. I'm telling you. I want to merge off of the high road and get down there. Okay. I want a sewer trench.
Yes. I want you. I know his whole thing is like, he's trying to protect his people, which we kind of talked about Tamlin not doing that, and Tamlin's so bad. So he doesn't want to start all out internal war between the courts. But I'm like, you show up and you take your mate back. To me, also, Rhys is just okay with Farah being with Tamlin. She can take care of herself. Like, when she goes back, like, he just waits for her to come back. And I'm like, upon reread, again, maybe the types of books we've been reading are different. I wanted him to storm in there himself and be like, I'm not dealing with this. She's my mate. She's my high lady, as we just talked about. She's my wife, basically. I'm not going to let her stay with her ex for a month. No matter what, if she's being a spy or destroying the court, I wanted him to physically beat up Tamlin. Also, another thing, and we've kind of touched on this already, he is too forgiving for politics of Mor's dad. I'm sorry. Like,
I think he's too forgiving for politics across the board.
I
think that's also part of the Tamlin no comeuppance, if you will.
Yes, which again, I think the point is he's supposed to be this great High Lord, and that's a reason Farah loves him. And she said Tamlin was a really bad one, and he is. Again, he made it unsafe for his own people. So Rhys is a great High Lord, and he sacrifices multiple times. That comes up. He's willing to sacrifice everything. But there's some places he shouldn't be so forgiving. There are times when I thought he should act with a little more personal vengeance.
Like, that's exactly my point, and what I agree with is, like, I just felt like there was no redemption for these characters. Because here's my point, right? Outside of not wanting to be on the high road anymore, is if you have all this power and you literally never use it for the people who are always out there making the sacrifices, kind of what's the point?
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess like a part of it is like I know in his character journey, he doesn't want to use his power. Yeah, I guess. But it is very interesting. You're like, I want to see it. Another thing, before you hurt my Farah, because she is my favorite female main character.
I didn't hurt her. Again, I still said I like her and I appreciate her.
You did.
I just wanted to know what she was doing to earn this title. That was it.
And you're right.
Again, that's it.
You said don't respond emotionally, and I did respond emotionally because I said
no hate on her not doing the job. I'm just saying we amp up this high lady. Girl's not doing a job. Okay,
she's really not. She's
on sabbatical.
She is on sabbatical.
To stop amping her up as high lady, I want them to call a spade a spade.
Okay, you're right. I see your points, and I concede that you're right. We'll leave it there. I thought you were going to on Azriel.
Actually, I feel completely different upon this.
Oh my god! Okay, tell me more.
I was completely underwhelmed by him the first read through. I'm just going to be honest with you. People talk about how much they love him, and I was like, for what? I would say up until this point that we're talking about, I stand by for what? In Silver Flames, we can talk about it a little bit more, but I think up until this point, I know nothing about Azriel. He has a couple commentary moments that are cool, but again, so does Lucien, and I have no feelings towards him either, other than boredom.
True. I think that the only thing that I really appreciate about Azriel up until this point, not going into Silver Flames, is what I like about his character. I see what you're saying, because even, I'm going to go into your territory really fast. Cassian definitely becomes fast friends with Farah. Like, they have a specific bond.
A lot of yapping, a lot of screen time.
Exactly. And a lot of, like, they're besties in a way. Like, you know what I mean? I think that Azriel, we don't really get to see that bond with Farah as much. I think Rhys treats him a little bit more like a employee versus like a brother. Like, he treats Cassian like his brother. But I feel like from Azriel's perspective, he's just utilized more.
I don't think that. I think it's just more his personality. And he doesn't talk a lot. Sense. And he prefers to feel like he's protecting, and that's his way of showing that. So I really don't think it's again, it's not a negative. It's just
no.
He doesn't have any quote unquote screen time, so it was hard for me to feel any which way. The only thing I found likable, not likable is not the right way to put it. The only thing that I thought made him, oh, that's nice.
Or you get more of his character, like you understand more about him.
Was the way he treats and feels about women, and specifically women without power, because of what happened to his mom. I think that they have a clear shown of love there and motivation there, and that was the only real insight you get into his personality.
Well, I think we get more insights into his personality, but I do think that they're all tied to he wants to protect women that have been wronged, which I absolutely love.
And I just, like I said, up until this point, I just don't have enough to feel, like, I just don't feel strongly about him.
Got it.
He lifts out.
Yes.
As Phoebe would put it.
We will talk more about him in Silver Flames.
So you heard it here first through the grapevine. If you like what you heard, you can find us on Instagram and at this point in time, TikTok.
We're living in a wild world.
Sipping on spice. But yes, we went dark for several hours. We are back.
We persisted.
We persist.
We also have a YouTube channel where you can find our previous podcast episodes, as well as just some really fun bookish content type videos. So please like and subscribe on YouTube as well.
Yes, and we will be back with another episode to talk about A Court of Silver Flame specifically. There's just way too much to dive into here, so we had to keep them separate. We hope to see you there.
Cheers.
Cheers.